Hello and welcome to my live interview today for the Victorious Souls podcast. Today, I have a lady named Tess Scott who has survived multiple divorces and cancer and is remarried with a blended family. And she is here to share her story and her wisdom and her new book. Listen, sister. So I'm going to invite her in here to share her story with you. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Danielle Bernack from DanielleBernack.com. Love yourself from Survive to Thrive, that lady on the internet who loves you. And so welcome with me today, Tess Scott. Thank you, Tess, for being with me today.
Hey, thanks, Danielle.
So I told them that you have survived multiple divorces and cancer. But before we get into all of that and your amazing book, Listen, Sister, that's new this year, share with us a little bit about Tess and what was like to grow up. What was your life like before all of what you call the freak show?
Oh, yeah. It seems like it's been a freak show for a long time, so that's difficult. But I grew up in Ontario. I live in Sarnia now. I grew up outside of Watford, a little town in the country on a farm. I'm the oldest, and I have three younger brothers. And we lived a couple miles from town, so it was far to go to a friend's house. We kind of just hung out with each other mostly, and unless our parents were willing to drive and find us a friend, so your brothers have to be your friends, even though they're really lame. And but we had lots of fun. Yeah, it was good. It was good. And we went to a local school, went on the bus, and just, I don't know, it seems like a normal life to me because that was my life. Yeah. And as a teenager, I applied to college, was accepted in college, and then I got pregnant at 19. So in the 80s, when you got pregnant, you got married. I mean, that was just the thing. That's just the world where I lived in anyways. That's what was done. So I did. So I didn't go to college. I got married. I had a baby boy who I love dearly. He's 37 now, believe it or not. And I can't believe it because I think I'm 37. So
I understand that.
I'm not apparently, because he is. So
when we were younger, we looked at people older and we just saw they were older. But now that we're older, we're going, I still feel like that.
I know 57 seems like so old, and it's got a lot younger lately. Yeah. So I was married to his dad for a couple years. And then, I clearly was not old enough, mature enough to be married. And that marriage ended with divorce, sadly. And then a couple of years later, I got married again, and I was married for some years, and 10 years, I think, had three more boys, adopted a boy with special needs, and that marriage ended. And it felt very like it was a circle, like this cycle continually. As I look back, I can see it. But when you're in the middle of it, when every day you're just trying to survive, it feels like it's hard to see what maybe is easier for other people to see. I don't know. I wouldn't have listened to them anyway. But looking back,
thank you for your honesty there.
Totally honest, always totally honest. I did not listen to anyone who told me. So that also ended in divorce. And then I married my husband, Rick. And he came to the marriage with two kids. So that gave us 7, which is an odd number. I mean, who wants to have an odd number of kids? So I got pregnant. And so that made 8 boys. And my oldest son was 18 when my youngest son was born. So quite a spread, but 8 boys. And it was a freak show. I mean, that house full, like we had 5 teenager boys at the same time. Like the amount of milk, Danielle, we could have kept a cow going. I'm sure of it. Like we went through so much milk. It was crazy, and a lot of shenanigans, and a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun and a lot of things that weren't fun. Like some of our boys struggled with addiction. We found out that our adopted son has FASD and fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And that in itself is a whole world of struggle, for him and for people who love him. And it wasn't all fun, I think looking back, you can always choose what you're going to look at it as. And I see tons of fun times. We played board games like every night, and we had the best of times, but we also had some really crappy times, if I'm honest, but we made it through. And I was following the Lord. I was like in Bible study. I was leading a girls group. Everything I thought was going along, skippity boo there. And although, well, things weren't perfect. Okay. It wasn't perfect. I wasn't naive to think that things were perfect in my marriage, but there was so many other distractions going on as well, like the struggles that I spoke about with our kids, that I wasn't, it kind of took me, I kind of was blindsided, I guess, when my husband came to me and said that he was leaving, that, he didn't love me, he wasn't happy, and he was out. And I was shocked. I was so shocked. And, yeah, like I said, I was not foolishly thinking everything was perfect. I just thought, okay, we've been through these things for so many years. I mean, come on. So I begged God to not let that happen. I didn't want to be alone again. I didn't want to parent alone. I didn't want my kids to go through this again.
Yeah.
And there's still some shame in the church. And I was not a perfect wife either. I'm not giving all the blame to him. There's always both, or most often, always probably both sides.
Always. I would say always.
I would say always, right? Like it wasn't an abusive situation in any way, not that kind of thing. So I begged God, and I always say that I spent like weeks with my head in the green carpet of my bedroom, just like crying and crying and crying and begging God, like, don't let this happen. Don't let this happen. Like, I know you can pull this off. I knew God can do a miracle. God can, like, he can always do a miracle. Like he can raise the dead. It's the same God, and I believed 100% that he could do it. And he didn't, he chose not to. And Rick walked out, and and then after a year I came to him and said, like, I really want to like get back together or like work on this. Are you willing? And he said no. And we got divorced. And it felt terrible. It was so hopeless. It felt so hopeless, but I can say, looking back, because a lot of times we can understand maybe why things happened or see different things in things that happened, not at the time, not when we're in the darkness, right? Not when we're with our face smushed in the green shag carpet, not at that time.
You can only see green shag carpet.
That's right. That's right. It was really green, but later, right? Sometimes later, looking back, we can see, and I can tell you that time, what seemed like the worst time, brought me the closest to God I've ever been, because I felt like I needed him to breathe. Like, honestly, it was just that terrible. And we were divorced for 3 years, and then God reconciled our relationship.
So how did it happen?
It was really weird. So my husband is not a yeller ever, or a fighter. He's an avoider. So he just wouldn't answer me if I texted him something. It just would go unread, like he's more like passive aggressive, let's say. Yeah, I would say that even if he was in the room. Yeah, you are passive aggressive, but he's not here. So I'm not talking behind his back or anything. He knows all these things I'm going to say. So he would just not answer me. And then he started answering or saying something about our son, are you going to the basketball game, or, things like that. And then I asked him to pick him up early because I had to get the tires changed or something, Ontario weather. And he said, oh, I can give you a ride. And I thought, you're going to give me a ride, like in your vehicle? Okay, this is weird.
We're going to share like space.
We're going to share
like,
space,
okay.
And I can tell you that for those 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, I prayed daily, like that God would change his heart. Like I loved him so much. I knew that God could do it, but I didn't know if he would do it, because it's not always best for me. Right? I think I know, and I tell God what I want him to do. And I sometimes give him ways to do it because he needs my help. No, he doesn't. But I think
when you're dealing with people too, it's not like we're puppets. God doesn't, we can't just changes the person. Ta-da, now I will now maybe behave like this. It's not like that. So you have to have a willing participant.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Anyway, he asked me to go out for dinner, and yeah, he asked for forgiveness. He went through a whole, like a big conversation about everything and just asked to be in my life, to just date, to just be in my life with, yeah. And so I said, yes, we'll give it a try. And that's all I can promise you. And so, yeah,
So you had
that's
8
how,
kids. Did you have custody of all 8 of them, or did he have some and you had some, or?
well, we only had one together.
Right.
Right. So, and the oldest ones were, like my 18, well, what he was in his 20s by then, he had
Oh,
kids,
okay.
right? So the kids were older. I only had 2 at home, well, 3, one was in college, and then my special needs son, and then our son together at home. And yeah, we shared, we never fought. We didn't even fight in like custody or, like a separation agreement, like there was no fighting. There was never, which probably made it easier to get back together.
Mm.
Right. We had the same lawyer. We said, this is how we're going to do it. And we both signed it. Like everything was nice, like, which is weird. I know it sounds weird, but there was no, yeah, it was just weird. But I can say now, not that I ever want it to happen again, but I'm thankful for that time, like I said, because it forced me to realize, why do you believe what you believe? Is God still God if he doesn't do what I want? Right? I had to come to that point. What if God never reconciles my marriage? Is he still God? Is he still good? Does he still love me? Those are all the things that I needed to wrestle with for those years and did. And I'm thankful for that time. And now we are married again, so I'm like over the top thankful for that. We got married on September 9th of 2016. And we just went to the pastor's office in the church because, your 4th wedding, you don't have a big extravagant affair, I find. So we just went, just like 4 or 5 of us, and got married and came home and called our kids and said, hey, guess what? We got married. And yeah, so it was lovely.
How did the kids feel about it?
Yeah, they were happy. They were shocked when we started dating. I mean, we dated from May the 4th until September. We didn't live together. We lived apart and, came together after we got married. We're going to do it right this time. And yeah, they were all happy. Yeah, I think they were shocked when we started dating though. Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
then you got married and then something
Yeah.
else happened. Then
Yeah.
then the
So
cancer happened. What happened there? Tell us that story.
yeah, so we got married on September the 9th, like I said, and planning on having a honeymoon and, like you're just thinking all these wonderful things.
Yes, we're
And
finally back together again. And now the angels can start singing and we get the happily ever after part, right?
that's right.
This is
That's
where the
right.
storybook happens, right?
Sure. All
Wait
the
a minute.
expectations. Yeah. But what happened was I had just a regular mammogram on September 30th, and it came back that I had breast cancer. So instead of the first year of our marriage being a lovely honeymoon and all of those things, it was a mastectomy and chemo and radiation and Herceptin and trips to the hospital. The cancer hospital is about an hour from here and all that. So, that was really disappointing. And I can tell you that I told God on many occasions that I was disappointed and that it was the worst timing, because I was actually angry for a little while because I thought, man, I finally have a husband again, and I can have this great year. My expectations were like, I'm going to have this great, everything's going to be perfect. Our son's doing way better. We're together, we're parenting together, all these things. And then I don't know, it was really difficult to cope with that at first because I guess it was my expectations were kind of dashed, but what I learned, and
It
again,
says in the Bible that hope deferred makes the heart grow sick. I mean, it really is. You had this great big hope and it's like you got shoved under the water. Yeah.
And held under there for a little while.
Yeah.
But
Gasping for air.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But what I learned, and like I said earlier, like I didn't learn it in the dark time. And there was a dark time when it felt terrible. And I can say that, like, I remember coming to my husband and just bawling. I mean, the poor guy, and saying like, I just like, you thought when you married me that you didn't know that I was going to have a mastectomy. You didn't know that I was going to have chemo and lose my hair. I don't look great with no hair. I mean, it's not nice. And you didn't know that I was going to be sick to my stomach and, all these things. And he said, you know what I knew? I knew when I married you that we're going to be married until one of us dies, till the end of our life. That we're getting older. We're in our 50s. And someday someone is probably going to have to take care of the other one. And that's what I'm in for. Whatever that is, I love you.
Wow.
And that was a gift to me, Danielle.
Oh,
That was a
yeah.
gift. That was a gift. And so I'm thankful for that timing that I thought was the worst timing and I complained was the worst timing to God. And what he taught me in that time that I learned later was that timing allowed my husband to take care of me, to show he loved me. I had no choice but to allow him to do that because I needed the help. I needed him to help me wash my hair and, help me when I'm sick. And, he made me tea and brought it to the couch and all those things. He looked after the house and the family and the kid, our son and the kid, and all of that. And it allowed him to be able to do that. And it allowed our other kids, our older children, to be able to see like, look, dad's in it. He's here. He's not going anywhere. It just cemented in our minds that like, this is it. He's in. It was really, the timing was really the best timing. Now, had it been different, let's say if we play with this, like I got sick and he heard, oh, Tess has cancer, I'm going to come back. So, and he calls me up and says, I heard you had breast cancer and I want to get back together. No, there is no way I would ever have said okay to that. I couldn't have trusted him. I would have thought that's the only reason, so in the end, it was the best timing. At the time, it was crappy. I'm not making light of it or saying it was fun or anything, but I'm saying that sometimes later, we can look back on hard times and see that there was a gift there in that suffering. And, so that's hope. That's hope for the future, that we can encourage other women. And I can come along other women that I know who have cancer, specifically breast cancer, and say like, these are the things, this is how it happened for me. Some things are the same as you. Some things are different from you. How can I encourage you? How can I come alongside you physically, like bring meals, or, how can I pray with you? How can my husband encourage your husband? And that's always good. It's nice to have someone who has been there before you to walk alongside you. It's different. Like my friends, I have friends who were there for me like all the time. I have one specific friend who had breast cancer 5 years before me. Her name's Annette, and she's lovely. And she showed up at my door the day I came home from the hospital after the mastectomy. And by the way, they keep you in, like I had it at noon and I was out of that hospital at 4:00. Like in and out you go, out you go, out you go. It's crazy. Anyway,
that is
my husband
crazy.
was
That's
there.
such a life-altering
I know.
thing.
Yeah. Anyway, my husband brought me home. See, he drove. It's good. I didn't have to drive home, so that's good. It just seems crazy, but I was fine. Anyways, my friend Annette showed up at the door and she had this package. We opened up this box and it has cupcakes, and every cupcake, it's pink and it has a little red jelly bean on the top, and it looks like a little breast, like all these little boobs in this box, and we just, I laughed, but nobody else could have done that, right? You couldn't have brought me that, but she's been there, right? So she can do that. And we can come alongside people no matter what we've been through. If they're going through something that we've already been through, it just means something a little bit extra to say, I've been there too, not exactly the same exact journey as you're on, but I got through it, and there's hope, and God will give you peace in the midst of it, and that is really a gift.
Yeah. And something I'm just seeing like unfold as I'm listening to you, having gone through those marriages and divorces multiple times, and then your husband saying what he said about, I'm here till one of us dies,
Mhm.
and your kids watching that, that's really the way God designed marriage to be, if we do it the way he designs it,
Mhm.
because he designs everything great if we would listen to him. And but one of the parts of the traditional vow is in sickness and in health. And I had interviewed another lady for my podcast here, and she took care of her husband, and it was that same premise. It's like, I signed on till
Mhm.
death do us part. And for your kids to see how you had been through that not happening, and then seeing it happen, that's just a beautiful unveiling for
Mhm.
them to see that that can be a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a vow that can be acted upon. It's not impossible. I think some people, maybe they don't do those vows because they think they're impossible,
Mhm.
but they're not. They're just hard.
Mhm. Yeah, they are hard.
But
Yeah.
your husband is just demonstrating that, and that's just beautiful that your kids get to witness that. See, that can happen till death do us part. We're committed to each other through that. And I see what you mean about the timing thing. If you would have came back after, it'd be, hey, you're just feeling sorry for me.
Mhm.
It wouldn't convey that committed love like what he did convey
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
committed love. I'm here for the long haul. I'm in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
That's
so
just
thankful.
wonderful. That's beautiful. And I just wanted to pause and just really highlight that also for our listeners, for them to not just gloss over that, to see the comparison of that not taking place and then it taking place. And so you get to be like an illustration of
Mhm.
people think it's not possible, but look at it is. And now
Yeah.
you get to taste that. And I'm so happy for you.
Oh, so I'm so thankful. And like I said, I knew God could do it.
Mhm.
I always knew he could, but I didn't know if he would,
Yeah, but
right?
like I
It's not
said, you need a
always
willing
possible.
participant. Your husband
Yeah.
he had to choose
Mhm.
to sign on for that. And you had to choose to let him.
Yeah.
Am I going to let him come back? I was hurt when he left before. I mean, there's a lot of,
Oh, yeah.
we're a part of it. It's not like, we're little puppets. So it's,
Yeah.
that's where it gets complicated, because humans are
Yeah.
complicated people.
Yeah. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy getting back together. It wasn't, because it's never like you open that door and then everything that happened is just gone.
Mhm.
Right. And so we had to work through a lot of things, like months and months of talking, and he made great, he was amazing. I mean, he said, you can ask me anything about anything and I will always tell you the truth. And maybe I didn't always want to hear it, but I needed to, those kinds of things. And like I said, it wasn't all his fault. Right. And my other marriages weren't all my partner's fault. Like I sometimes more my fault than anybody's. But like you said, we know that God can do this. Like we can be married until death do we part. And I think sometimes people go into marriage like I did, with this expectation that everything is going to always be perfect. And if it's not, then I'm out of here.
Mhm.
But we need to just maybe tread water sometimes, because, there's going to be days you're not even going to like him. That's just part of it. We're human beings. There's going to be days he's not going to like you.
There's days we don't like ourselves.
There's days we
And
don't
we
like
need to let
ourselves.
them be a human being.
Right. And hello, there's hormones. Like that's not really fun, So let's be honest here. I don't even like them. So, but if you expect that you're going to marry somebody and every day is going to be like your wedding day was, or but a little bit less stressful, then that's not realistic. That's just
Right.
not going to happen. So, just move on, not move on in a marriage, but move on to day 2 and day 3 and tread water and, do what you can do, go to counseling, whatever it is, and love that person. And it can work.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mentor ladies and you do speaking and stuff. What do you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
How did that unveil, and what all do you do?
Yeah. So, well, I knew that I felt really strongly that God wanted me to share my story, the whole freak show life. And I didn't know what that would look like. but I knew, I mean, I wish that God would just like announce it in the sky maybe,
You're
or,
not alone with that, but he doesn't.
no, he doesn't send me an email. I've often asked for a text message. So I am, none of that happens. None of that happens. But when you know that God's talking to you, and you read it when you're reading your Bible, you kind of know it, or you're at church and then the pastor says the same thing, and then you're on the way home from church and the song comes on the radio and it's like, Tess, listen to me. And so that God, that's what God's saying, whatever that looked like. But I really didn't want to do it, Danielle, because it's really vulnerable, and it's really terrifying to share your life, the reality of your screw ups, the reality of what you really like or were like. And sharing that is hard. It's hard being honest and vulnerable. So I said to God, okay, someday. And I just went on with life, and I was working at a college and at the fire school, every girl's dream. And I was getting ready for work in the morning, and I was putting on my makeup, and I noticed that my mouth was like crooked, like one side's up, one side's down, and I thought that looks really whacked. So I just kept putting on my makeup and I went to work and opened the door because I had to be there first, open the door and let the students in and do all of those things. And my boss came in and said, "What's wrong with your face?"
That's a fun thing to hear.
No woman wants to hear that, let me tell you. So I went to Emerge, and they start doing all these tests, and they call my husband to come in, and they said, you might be having a stroke. And by the time my husband arrived, my words were all garbled up and my vision was all blurry. And they, so I stayed in for 3 days, which is a long time to stay in a hospital these days, 3 days. Mm-hmm. And they ran a bunch of tests, and they said it wasn't a stroke. It was a TIA, right? So transient ischemic attack, like a temporary disruption in the blood flow to the brain with no long lasting effects, like kind of like a little warning, just a little thing. So I came home and I said to my husband, I am so thankful that it was a false alarm, right? Like it was a false alarm. Thank you, God. And my husband looked at me and he said, "Was it, Tess? Was it a false alarm?" I still remember him saying that. And he said, "Or maybe it was a real alarm, because you know what God is asking you to do. And every one of us only has so many days on this earth. And you don't know what that number is. Might be a really big number, and it might be a really small number, right? And you know what God's asking you to do. And I think you need to get to it and start doing it." So he said, "I want you to consider quitting your job. I'll work 10 years longer and, to retirement, and quit your job and, or consider it." I mean, he didn't make me do it. And, write the book.
I'm going to just pause and back that up there.
Yeah.
I want people to hear that. I want you to quit your job and I'll work 10 years longer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's powerful. That's enormous.
It is enormous. It is enormous. You're right. Yeah. And, so like, I loved that job. I just have to tell you, I love that job. I miss it because I miss seeing people all the time. Anyway, it was amazing and cry. So I went back into work, and I told my boss, I'm going to quit. I'm going to retire. And he said at the end of the year, and I said, no, like in a couple of weeks. So I did. I quit my job, and that was April of 2021. And started working on my book that I had just been doing, like short stories, like blogs sort of. And in June, I got a book contract, and here we are. It was just amazing. It was just amazing because it's none of it is of me. I know that I am not a educated writer. I'm not a journalist. I didn't go to college. I got pregnant at 19. Right? I didn't go to post-secondary education. This is 100 God, 0 tests. Any of this. It's just being willing to do what God says he wants you to do. If you know what that is, step out one step at a time. That's all I know, is one step at a time. So I started writing. I sent a book, what do you call that? Oh yeah, book proposal. See, I sent a book proposal. I got a book contract, so the next step. So the book, my book, which is called Listen, Sister, show you, Finding Hope in the Freakshow of Life. Came out.
That picture she's laying down, is that grass or is that the green carpet?
It's grass, and it could be me, because have you felt like that before?
Oh, because you talked about the green carpet.
I
So it was
know.
the first thing I thought of there. It's like, there you are praying in the green carpet.
Yeah, yeah, it could be green carpet as well. It wasn't that nice of a color of green, but sure, it was really ugly. But yeah, and so the book came out in June 2022, and so I've been doing all the book things, to try to launch the book, and it's in bookstores, and going out and speaking to groups of women and encouraging them about how to find hope in their freak show of life, whatever that looks like. Like, not all of them have 8 boys at home, not all of them, probably not very many of them, but
I don't have
everybody.
8 boys.
No,
I never
but
had
your
8
life,
boys.
but you might say that sometimes your life is a freak show,
Oh, yeah.
like everything seems like it's chaos and you're in the middle of it, and in the darkness you can't see how there's hope. Right. So I want to
Yep.
encourage women that there's always hope and how to find it. So I've been having so much fun taking the stage and speaking to groups of women at churches and events, and making them laugh. And if I can make you laugh till you pee your pants, my job here is done. That's all. And yeah. So it's been just really, really fun.
I love laughing. I don't want to pee my pants, but
No.
I do love laughing really hard till my stomach hurts.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That'll be okay. Yeah.
Oh, so how can people connect with you?
Yeah, so you could go to my website, which is tessscott.com. That's easy, right? My name, tessscott.com. And there you can connect on, there's like a contact button at the top where you can send me an email and I can pray for you, or we can have a little chat by email. I'm on social media, so all the links are there on my website. The book is available everywhere books are sold. So if you're in the United States, it's at Barnes and Noble. I saw it at walmart.com, all those places. If you go to your bookstore and it's not available, you can get it online, but ask them to get it in and put it on the shelf, and we can encourage more and more women. In Canada, it's also at Kohl's, Indigo. It's at all the places, independent, that's the word, independent bookstores, in different cities, Christian bookstores. It's on christianbook.com. So yeah, it's going well, and it's so fun. I just love encouraging women, and I feel like wherever I go, women say, you know what, that was me. I know what that felt like. You know what I felt like at that really bad day, that I was just maybe not on their floor in their bedroom, but just feeling hopeless. And I want to encourage them that they can get through that.
Yeah, there's nothing like that kind of connection where you feel like you're not alone, and
Yes.
it breeds that hope within you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, I'm very glad that you are doing that. People need the hope infused in them like that. Thank you for sharing your story with us today. Is there anything that you would like to add before we call this a day?
I just want to add that the most important way that I've found to remember how to find hope is to think of how God got you through the past, right? So I journal, whatever you want to do, sometimes take pictures of things, or however you have those memories. And then you can look back on them in the really hard times and remember, like, man, God got me through then. He's going to get me through now. There is hope.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for being with us today. Until next time, I love you.